Good afternoon and welcome to the Day After podcast on our sub-show Pixar Sunday, where we watch and discuss every Pixar film in chronological order. Today is episode 13, where we are discussing Brave, which was released in 2012, directed by Brenda Chapman and sort of by Mark Andrews.
Sort of by Mark Andrews.
Let's ignore the stank for a little bit. I want to hear what you have to say, because you really enjoy this culture.
Yeah. So, I have more connection with Irish folklore than I do Scottish, but I like the setting. This is the anti-Wall-E for me. This is absolutely 100% a movie that I'm absolutely interested in, not only the characters, but the world that they live in.
I was shocked that I enjoyed this as much as I did.
Yeah, so we watched this earlier when we were dating, and if I remember right, you had kind of lukewarm feelings about it, but you had a lot nicer things to say more consistently this time.
This time, I think I've grown a little less petty, and I have to talk about the things that I enjoy. I used to think I wasn't a fantasy person, and I think that's still halfway true. We discussed during the movie the difference between fantasy and high fantasy. Now, if I can just capitulate what my wife said during the movie, is that fantasy is things that are set in our world. They still include normal-ass human things like humans and bears and hawks and crap, but high fantasy is kind of the stuff you would see in, like, The Lord of the Rings, where you have Ents and orcs and goblins and elves.
Yeah, and I'm sure that there's some big film student could lay down the main differences, but if we ever use the terms here, fantasy versus high fantasy, that's what we mean.
I would consider this a regular fantasy. Yeah?
I would consider this a fantasy story. Yes.
Good,
in fact, most Disney is.
Good, because I like it. Brenda Chapman, when this was directed, it came originally from her relationship with, I think, her kid, either her kid or her mom.
You said her mom when I asked you.
I believe it is her kid. Johnny, put up the actual answer on the screen. It was her. That was kind of the core that it went through, and they're like, she was asked in an interview with Pixar Portal, how do you feel about was Scotland important to the story, or was it just a stylistic choice? She goes, well, I wanted it to be kind of a Northern European area where we could kind of go off that kind of look to the land. And then at some point in production, she said, you know what? It's just Scotland.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, as long as I feel like it's not that it needs to have meaning, but if you're gonna choose your setting, then choose your setting. This is France, Germany, Englandish.
I don't know. There was a war. Deal with it. But no.
Yeah, but no. This is definitely Scotland. There's Scottish clans.
And when you are pinning things down, some things need pinned down right away, and some things need pinned down later. And I feel like when it came time to pin down exactly where this is, that's when Scotland came on board.
Yeah.
This Merida is officially, according to Wikipedia, the 11th and second most recent Disney princess.
And the only one from Pixar. And I always thought it was weird, and maybe you can shed some light on this because you've done more research. Why is it that they chose to do just kind of a regular Disney princess movie through the Pixar studio?
And I'll link it if I can find it again. I'm gonna keep referencing this Pixar Portal interview I read a couple hours ago. That Brenda Chapman herself was kind of disillusioned with the princess who goes along with everything. And hear me out. I'm not saying at all that is an unpopular opinion.
Okay.
One is that she didn't like the princess that goes along with everything. Two, she was getting really burnt out on parodies of fairy tales.
Yeah.
And while Shreks 1 and 2 did it very well, you could see Follow the Leader attempts beginning to snowball, and she was a little disillusioned with that, which is why, to this movie's really good credit, it's something that I didn't notice the first time, they play a lot of the fantasy elements very, very close to the chest and very straight.
Yeah, and I do like that this is just your standard fairy tale. It's not a fairy tale necessarily. It's not Cinderella or Snow White, but it is a fairy tale, and it's played straight, and it is nice in that world when it came out to just have that, to not have it having to satirize or Jesus fucking Christ be meta every 5 seconds.
Oh yeah, how fun was that? You know how, guys, audience, do you know how refreshing it is that the most satirical joke in the entire movie is, if you're looking for this person, put this vial into the cauldron.
Yeah.
That is the most current, if not current events, I don't know.
Yeah, but it's making fun of those
the most
phone
modern
messages.
joke. when that's the most modern joke. That's so refreshing.
And yet they use this very like fantasy setting, and again, not high fantasy, just fantasy, to tell a very, very relatable story. It's a fantasy world, however, and I said this when I first watched it, the relationship between Merida and her mother is something very, very real and true and believable.
So to get into the characters, I just want to back off and look at this setting, because I feel like it did...
What else have we been doing for 5 minutes?
Well, let me just... I'm picturing a scene, and that scene is, they're at the table, right? With the parents and Merida and the 3 kids.
Yeah.
Thank God they don't talk. It's not clean, and I mean, it's not like Disney where everything kind of feels like there are dogs jumping on the table.
Yeah,
and crap being thrown on the ground.
It's very rustic. I mean, like, Merida is not the super prim and polished princess, which again, that's more the princess du jour when this came out, of to have somebody who breaks traditions.
Unfortunately for Brenda, this doing a Disney, not a Disney princess, let's back off. Doing a princess tale in any respect, and being disillusioned with a princess that goes along with everything. When people attempt to buck that trend, they overcorrect, and you get things like, I'm gonna be Mile, and they overdo it. And this still kind of falls in that.
So I'd like to discuss Merida for a moment.
Yeah, please.
Well, one of the things that bothers me the most about this movie every time I watch it, I love the setting, I kind of like the story she goes on, but we'll get to that later. She's fucking irritating. And that does not make her a bad character. It makes her a very, very true to life 15-year-old girl.
Can you give an audience an example of what makes her irritating?
She refuses to take responsibility for her actions, which is the key plot point of the movie.
It is a result of the key plot point in the movie after she has turned her mother into a bear from a witch who is being deliberately almost like genie in a magic bottle vague about changing your fate.
Yes, and she refuses to try to see anybody else's side of things besides hers.
It will not be my fault.
And what she wants and what her desires are the most important thing. Now, granted, what her mother is putting her through is not fair, and I think teens and teen girls recognize that sometimes you don't want what your parents want for you, and that's fine. But, and again, I think she's a great character. I think she's very relatable, but she annoys the fuck out of me.
It's certainly irritating when... I do appreciate these snap cuts of them having almost identical hypothetical conversations with herself, with her in the castle and Merida out cleaning the horse, where they talk about, I wish you would just listen to me. Interesting. Now, if you guys had that discussion in the same room, movie over.
Right, but even when, so... Merida's problem of not, Merida and her mother's problem of not listening to each other, that does not get resolved with bareness. What gets resolved with bareness is Merida learning to stop being such a selfish brat.
And now having to take care of this mother who has never been outside.
Right, and to take responsibility for her, and that's a very small part of that movie.
Yeah, I suppose.
But she is now forced to deal with the consequences of her actions, and I think it's important that kids see that.
You wanted to articulate right before we went in, you feel like this movie is not intentionally, but it's frustratingly vague about the idea of changing your fate.
Yeah, okay, so it uses fate and destiny like candy, or like BuzzFeed headline words. I like the story. I like, in a similar way to Frozen, I like the idea of telling family relationships over romantic ones.
Because they're tougher to do.
They're tougher to do, and they're more relatable, and it's something everybody deals with, and it's a more complicated relationship. So I think it's great that this deals with this family bond, but why use words like changing your fate and seizing your destiny to do that?
I'm sorry I gave you the benefit of the doubt. I wanted this to be, when it opens with, people say fate is kind of like a tapestry that it interweaves with all of these different people and these different events and times, and I expected a much richer, maybe more dense story, because I feel like in most respects they do take this culture seriously.
So John's knee-jerk reaction when we saw this the first time, and I have come to agree with him, This movie would be a great short.
I remember being hard on that. I remember being it would make a great
Yes.
short. Here's the worst part. It would make a great short because I can look at Incredibles 2 and say that's really fatty. Here and here and here is where you cut stuff. This is pretty thin to begin with. Not like anemic or anorexic thin.
Yeah.
But it runs at a pace that by itself is still, the bones are sticking out a little bit.
And it's padded out with way too much slapstick, with stupid asshole men antics.
That's our point after this.
We'll get to the guys here in a minute. But it is. This would be a great little story of Merida and her mother fighting. Merida gets this cake, feeds her mom, turns into a bear, and they go on this journey to figure out how to fix that. That would be a great 40 to hour long movie.
I would do 44 minutes. It would fit perfectly in an hour long.
Yeah. But you pad it out and you have extra characters that don't really matter, like the three little boys. You go into this whole weird, epic, ancient kingdom thing, which is unfortunate because it results in one of the most terrifying things about this movie, which is that giant fucking bear.
That bear's badass.
God, he's terrifying.
Oh my god, he's awesome.
But all those elements, they're just pieces, and they feel like extra pieces. They feel like the extra nuts and bolts you have after putting a bookshelf together, and you're like, why is this here?
Okay, damn, that was a good analogy. Just park it for a second. I don't know how to feel because I definitely felt this to myself. Part of buying this video on demand on YouTube is when you look at the runtime, you realize, okay, she's about to turn into a bear. This is 40 minutes in.
And the beginning of this movie is really good. That awesome, the shots of her as a little kid, that awesome ride through, that gorgeous, gorgeous song. And you get to see this world and you get to experience Merida's family. And then her mom turns into a bear. And for me, that movie just screeches to a fucking halt.
We have kind of differing opinions where this movie kind of not falters, maybe screeches, like you said. My problem is not realizing that the movie takes 40 minutes for her to turn into a bear. It's me trying to decide if I'm okay with that. Because when she is arguing with her mother and setting up this character between her and Bear Mom, who are the two most important characters, I think that helps the movie gel more later game.
Mm-hmm.
But then again, like, people have posted, hey, I read and review screenplays that people pitch me for a living. Here are 300 screenplays I looked at. Here's the biggest problems with that. One of the top 3 problems is the actual story gets started way too late.
Mm-hmm.
It's over 40% into the movie before she's a bear.
And I think that's where it would be better as a short. If that occurred halfway through the movie, I feel like that would be better, or maybe even a little earlier.
Or paced considerably better.
Yeah. It's a pacing problem.
That's why I always...
And it's padded out with this stupid little, oh, isn't it cute that she doesn't know the berries are poison.
That is why I really appreciate just as not even thematically related shows like Louis C.K.'s show Louis.
Yeah.
In that if an episode took 8 minutes to tell, great. If it took 45 minutes to tell and you had to tell it over several episodes, fine.
Yeah.
Make your story fill out exactly what it needs.
Yes. And the worst padding in this movie is the fucking guys.
Guys, let me tell you. I'm going to try my best to very carefully step over the jacks that somebody has spilled onto the production screenwriting floor because Brenda... Well, let me back up. Pixar has been getting flack that I couldn't find any sources for, but apparently there's flack because up until now there have been no female protagonists in their movies. And Brenda Chapman, maybe not as a response to that, she really felt strongly about this story that was originally pitched to Pixar in 2008 called The Bear and the Bow. Which was retooled and reworked with the help of John Lasseter and Mark Andrews into what we now know as Brave. So it has an irritating but a very powerful stand-on-your-own female lead, and a mom who, while also powerful, kind of doesn't great with the mom. But you lose your ability to you lose your ability to show a strong, powerful woman when your limbo bar is like between the twin towers and you have to like walk under it. I'm done. Talk.
Okay, so the guy. Okay, number one, Billy Connolly's fantastic.
Yes.
He just is. He was fantastic in How to Train Your Dragon. He's fantastic here. Not talking about him. Moving on.
All right.
The main plot point of the early movie is that Merida needs to get married, and the 3 different Scottish clans of this kingdom come and present their sons. One's a very narcissistic high school jock asshole. One's this weird little
quiet man you can't understand.
Yeah, who speaks a different language. I hope it's Doric, but it may not be. And the loser.
Yeah.
Is the 3rd one.
Which is a really... God, sorry.
Their dads are just pastiches of them, and the only thing these guys do is fight with each other and look stupid and be silly and that's it. And so it's like, yes, we're focusing on the girls, but like this background, I'm constantly like, why are these guys fucking idiots? Why turn them into caricatures?
I used to think that I disliked that portion because it was straight slapstick. And I think that there are portions of the slapstick that tickle me. Maybe it's because you're throwing a lot at the wall at once and sometimes you get a good laugh out of me. What I don't appreciate is that these people, in an effort to make strong women, we've made the men jokes.
Yes, in an effort to highlight the features of one gender, you completely demoralize and sideline the other.
And that's fine, but you've made them time-wasting jokes.
Yeah. They're just padding at this point. They're not besides Billy Connolly, they're not characters. They're just there to be there, and I don't know what girl is going to look at these guys and go, men are dumb. Because we already know that. And I'm just like, I don't understand why. And is it just like, oh, this is the lady boss revenge for all the times we've been sidelined over the years? But you're better than that, Pixar. Let's
stir your drink for a little bit to get the salt to dissolve. Welcome to Pixar Mainstays, a very confusing Pixar Mainstays.
Oh yeah.
Where we point out the 3 recurring elements in nearly every Pixar film. John Ratzenberg has a very small bit as Gordon the Guard, the one opening and closing the gates and announcing to the kingdom that these 3 clans and their suitors have arrived. Very bit part. The witch, I love the witch so much. She carves everything, and most of it is bears, but one of them, when you pan around, she has made a wood carving of the Pizza Planet truck.
That's so neat.
Can I buy that? That's cool. That's awesome.
I'll buy you a wooden Pizza Planet truck.
Johnny, edit this footage any way you can do it. There's... in the darkness, way in small font as she enters the witch's kind of area, across the top of the door is the Roman numerals ACXIII for A113.
Okay.
It's tough to find, but it's up there. The internet tells me it's up there. Somebody in the character design and the CGI area here thought that these characters were the funniest looking motherfuckers, and I think that the movie thinks that they're carrying more weight than they are, because especially the doofus loser one, that's like borderline mean-spirited.
And I feel like every girl looks at those and just like sees their dads and their uncles and they fool around, but like and I'm not going to use the phrase toxic masculinity because I don't think it applies here, but I kind of have that idea of that girls need to know that guys can be, people.
Yeah, and it's cool to have like one-off pop shots, like, I bet he has anger issues. Like,
yeah,
but it
cannot carry 20 minutes of the movie, which is what I would estimate.
But
these guys care.
I feel like because the writing and the characterization on the men's part is so poor, it makes me think that somebody thought that the physical descriptions of these characters, like the guy with the little lip that comes out and he's got like a big old hair mohawk that he definitely didn't intend on having, can carry more of that character, and they just can't.
Yeah.
Do you want anything to talk about? I want to just...
I do want to mention, so he was talking about character design. I will say the designs are very good, and the landscapes of this movie, the color palette, are fucking gorgeous.
I was jerking off the color palette the whole time.
And again, I'm biased because this is my setting. I love this kind of shit. But it looks so good. Yeah.
And at the beginning and the end, when they stop being a Disney or a Pixar movie and start embracing the culture, at the beginning when she's riding her horse and climbing the fire falls or whatever.
Yes.
And at the end when the sunrise is threatening to keep her mom a bear forever, and it's a very quiet, prolonged moment.
Yeah, as it slowly sneaks its way down the
That's such
hedge.
a cool set piece. Such a cool set piece. You could really feel like the love that went into that. Just as a quick aside, Brenda Chapman, it's so under wraps, but Brenda Chapman, 3 years into the 4-year development cycle for this movie, got pitched off the project and replaced with Mark Andrews. And thank God she actually received a director and a story credit still.
Mm-hmm.
But nobody will talk about why that happened. The only information that Wikipedia has is that she had a creative difference with John Lasseter.
That's fair.
And I'm not going to go any further on that because I don't want to pitch theories that have no basis in real life or any truth value.
2 little asides I want to go into before final thoughts. Mor'du's fucking cool.
Mor'du's
terrifying.
badass.
I don't like his story arc, and I wish it wasn't in there because it pads out the movie, and it doesn't really add anything to it, but he's fucking terrifying. And I love... And people never talk about this, and I wish it was focused on more, and I won't talk too much about it, but Merida fucking sword fights her dad.
That's okay.
And chops his wooden leg off, saying, "Get the fuck back."
But that is when the movie drops this pretext of I'm better than these stupid boys and just is better.
Yeah, and it just, boom, and then we're done.
It's shocking that she's actually sword fighting her dad, and that's badass.
And it's not like played up for, oh, isn't she such a girl boss? Like, the movie does not suck her dick for doing that. It's just a really, really cool, powerful moment of seizing that.
I'm gonna go first because thematically this is your baby. I'm so glad I rewatched it because my opinions have gone up. I'm glad that unlike other Pixar movies which make many different mistakes, a la Monsters Inc., this makes one mistake repeatedly, but the rest of the movie's pretty good.
Yeah, it's definitely worth the ride, definitely worth the watch, definitely worth multiple watches in my opinion. It's a great world to be in, a great world to exist in. Merida annoys the fuck out of me, but she's female, so that's not strange for me. And yeah, it has its problems. It would be a great short, but for what it is, it's still really good.
Thank you everybody for joining us on episode 13, where we watched and reviewed Brave from 2012, directed by Brenda Chapman. Normally we would jump right into 2000...
You give her the sole director credit
Mark.
in your bump. I love it.
Oh, Mark, get on the bump. Okay, fine. Normally we would jump right into 2013's Monsters University. However, just a little bit of house cleaning. In an attempt to get this series long enough that we can actually go see Soul when it releases in theaters, we have the first of 4 little extra bits that aren't specifically about Pixar movies, but we hope that will be Pixar related and interesting enough to talk about. But thank you everybody so much for joining, and we will join you in 1 week for something special.
Go change your fate.